Hi, welcome to Self-Generated. My name is Steve. I'm the host and creator of this series, and we're continuing our exploration of what it is to be a you, how we actually work, what is self, identity, action, and thought. This is not just for academia. I'm not a PhD, I'm just an average person. And this is how average people work, so we should be able to describe it in a way that average people can understand because it changed my life for the better. We're going to continue the exploration with prehistory, meaning where did we come from? What is it to be human? A lot of these things that we think of as just naturally being us, is this actual behavior that is coming from something biologically in us, or is it shit that we're taught? And that we're going to explore this in a way that maybe you haven't seen before. We're going to chunk it up into a few different episodes, but again, it's about just having an exploration about how we work. And I know just standing in front of a screen like this is not as enticing. I'm not necessarily a media guy, so I'm trying some new things to be a little bit more visually interesting. Please let me know what you think and come along. So when I say, where did you start? What do you think when I ask you that question? Like, where did you start? Was it your birth? Was it your conception? Is it, what about humans? Is it because of your ancestors? Is it your family line? Where did that start? Your grandfather? Your great-grandfather? How many generations back? Because humans go way far back, but where do you arbitrarily choose to start? That's the point. Because a lot of us think of when humans start, well, maybe, the cradle of civilization, right? 3,200 BCE, somewhere over the Mesopotamia. Or, the same time around then, the Egyptians were inventing hieroglyphics. So the birth of writing. And a lot of what you think of when you think of human history is that last 5,000 years. That really every history, every story, every civilization, every hero, every villain, every major war, all the major inventions that one can think of that you could attribute to somebody or someplace, and all the histories, all the stories, they all came from this period, 5,000 years. Sounds like a long time, but that only sounds like a long time if you don't have the perspective, because that's nothing in the scheme of what it is to be human. Because humans, biologically, we can trace back to at least a couple 100,000 years where we were anatomically, biologically human. There's something called mitochondrial Eve. Essentially, this would be our 8,000 time great grandmother. Why? Because we're related. Because all humans are related. We came from a lineage. And that lineage came from somewhere. It didn't pop into existence. We're not aliens. We don't look, if we look like octopi or something like that, I would get it, right? But we don't. We don't look like octopi or octopuses. Octopuses. We don't look like some strange alien animal because we're not. We're of Earth. We have eyes, we have teeth, we have hair, we have appendages, we have limbs, we have skin, we breathe, we have a heart, we have blood. Everything else, most other things on Earth are like that. And not only that, we're made of DNA. We're literally made of the same stuff. Literally. You and rice are significantly genetically similar. There are genes that are similar. Right? It's game fucking over. It's over. All right? We are of Earth. Anything outside of that is just, it's to support a story. There's just no evidence that, or there's no compelling evidence that says that we are completely alien. But here's why would I even stress this? Because if you look at what you have been taught, what it is to be human is that we're exceptional, we're different, that nothing else has what we have. That's how and why, if you want to believe, or you need to believe, or you have a foundational belief of that we were placed here, that we're special, that maybe it's not as spiritual and it comes more from your cable network of Ancient Aliens and History Channel, and you believe that we had to be altered, that a lot of these things have to be true in order for us to have gotten to where we are. The reason that those stories are so powerful is because most of us don't know and acknowledge that we were around for hundreds of thousands of years, biologically the same. What do you mean? Pause for that. Meaning that if I went 100,000 years ago, we grabbed a kid and we raised them in a bubble, because one thing that is different in this human being is that they're not as immune. So like a common cold would make them melt, let alone COVID-25 or whatever they would be exposed to. But that you could raise this human to be just as human as you or I, that they could work, they could run for office, they could have a position, they could read, write any language that they're taught, that they're not lesser. And what's that lesson? What's the thing this is the key takeaway of this episode, is that what is you is not just biology. It's not just circuits firing. Happiness is not just a circuit or a chemical. It is based off of culture, perception, society, what you're taught. You model what these things mean. What happens, happens. You model the meaning and the interpretation. And you get that from outside. You get that from mom, dad, society, TV, entertainment, your phone, right? We used to get it from just each other and the environment for hundreds of thousands of years when we grew up in small familial groups, 50 to 120 people. And it's a funny thing is that still to this day, most people have close groups. And I'll bring up the study that it seems that that's that magic number where people are happy with that 50 to 100 and change people that you know. And that's our natural state. And that learning and adaptability are core to being human, and that what we think of as human nature is largely shaped by culture. It's not in behaviors, emotions, beliefs. Then we think of these things as fundamentally human nature. Being afraid of a spider, it's instinctual. It is not. What is instinctual is being afraid of the unknown because you're a creature of active inference. Being afraid of things that do not match your model. It's not a circuit. It's software. It's behavior that you create unknowingly. We use the term unconscious, subconscious, but without your active thought, without being aware of it. This is, in fact, what makes you you. You, that sense of you, is reacting to these feelings. And you, that sense of you, reacts in the way that the narrative, the story, the model says so. If you act against that, you feel discomfort. It takes you a while to work through it. You want to become a great singer. You want to get on stage. You have discomfort. You have anxiety. You have trepidation. You work through it. You still get nerves, but it turns into excitement. It turns into energy. Or it turns into drug addiction. How you handle that signal defines you. Have you ever heard that before? Has that been brought up to you before? I never heard it. And it was, for me, that's the game changer. That I thought I was just biological, like these feelings were just coming up from some nerve firing, from some chemical signal. And I mean, which is asinine when you pause and you think, because you realize that it's coming from how you think. I knew I was coming from how I think, but I thought that how I thought triggered something that was outside of my control. That was a narrative that I adopted in order, because, well, one, because everything around me told me that. And two, that was more convenient for me than realizing that I had to change how I felt, what I accepted. And not only that, I didn't know how to do that. I didn't realize how that was an actual thing. Those were just words to me. It's like trying to go up climb a physical optical illusion that's not real. I don't know, what do you mean, how to do that? How do I change my mind in earnest versus just say I changed my mind versus saying I'm not angry, or all I'm doing is just not acting angry. How did I change those things? How do those change over time? I didn't understand that because I thought that was just my nature, right? And that I didn't realize that those were things that I had to change myself, my understanding, how I viewed the world, how I viewed other people, my exposure to other people, to get back to a natural, healthy state. That it wasn't just my diet and exercise. That part of my natural, healthy state is how I interact with other human beings, because that's what I'm fucking meant to do, because that's how we existed for hundreds of thousands of years, right? This introvert, extrovert, all these other labels, they're just labels, whether it's your internals, whether it's mental illness, whether it's race, whether it's gender, whether it's age, whether it's your belief systems, right? All of these things are just things that we use to identify you and other aspects of our story, so that we can accordingly act right around it, believe what we want around it. But they're not true. They're not real like we think they're real. I am a white guy. I'm going to show my DNA here. My family, I have proof, or at least evidence, that my family in one line of my lineage came over in the late 1600s. And they've been in the States ever since. You notice something? I'm really fucking white. They never dipped the pen out of the company ink. But you know what? Does that mean anything innately for me? Does that mean because of these genes that I have some sort of actual, genuine capability above others? The answer is no. And the answer that you need to hear and listen to is what other people think, because that is how they define themselves, right? We are force-fed this horse shit about race, identity, beliefs, and all of these things as being meaningful from the universe versus us making them meaningful. Because it wouldn't be as meaningful as us doing it, that there has to be something about this, that we have to fix this, that we have to do things actively. Now, if it's not really a thing, if you shouldn't judge somebody based off of race, then why do we judge people based off of race? Because even in the good ways that we try to fix it, we try to offset by judging based off of race, when race is an honest, earnest, non-thing. We make it a thing. If I gave you a book that had 10,000 pages, and that of those 10,000 pages, 30 to 300 pages, maybe 1,000 pages were different, but every other page was almost identical, would you say that they're fundamentally different books? Would you say that they are at their core definitively one is it can easily be seen as far superior than the other? I think for most people we go, that is stupid. How could that be? How could 1% change everything? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're less than 1% between you and I. The difference is we say we have, or what we say we have, not what we have. That if you're Chinese, if you're black, if you're white, you don't have innate specialties that are above and beyond that make you fucking magic or inferior. It's what we tell each other. It's how we act. It's because we believe we came from something that we didn't. It's because we need to. The reason we don't know these stories is because if we did, would you tolerate the horseshit that you go through on a daily basis, realizing it's all made up and it's mainly maintained by those who succeed and get the most of it? When we talk about 1%, it's not a conspiracy. It's if I put you in a position and everything you did, everybody said was right, and it made you money and wealth, and everyone around you that was successful said the same thing, why wouldn't you believe that's true? Why would you look into it? Why would you distrust it? Why would you try to take it down? These systems exist because we act like they exist. These systems exist because we don't question them. And the questioning starts with you. How do you work? How do you feel? How do you do these things? Where did you come from? Well, I'm telling you, we are all in this together. We've always been in this together for hundreds of thousands of years. And that we can retake the world as citizens of this world, but only through our own awareness, our own internal capabilities, and our own willingness to see each other for what we actually are, which is more brothers and sisters than enemies. And that is actually our no bullshit, real fucking history and truth. And that only in this recent little time did these things change. And we're going to explore that. We're going to explore how and why that changed. We're not going to go down the normal path of like, oh, we'll go back to tribal society. No. We're going to talk about this as fucking adults. Because a lot of it, what you think of, is if you think about it, is that I feel I thought of this more as a child. As overly simplistic, as that anything that was a threat was an enemy, that I just had to look to my higher source for comfort and guidance until I needed to realize that there was a part of me that needed to figure out how to deal with this. And not in some John Wayne horseshit way, in a peaceful, calm, loving, accepting kind of way. And I realize now that there's all these different stories about what different types of people and race and this and that, and there's good people and bad people and Christians and Jews, and no, there's two kinds of people. That's it. There's the people who can accept whatever reality is. They don't need their narrative to be true, to be at peace. Other people are then allowed to be whomever they are. And then there's those that can't. We are run by those who can't. Those are the people who are doers and takers and trendsetters and don't take no for an answer. And it's because they can't take no for an answer. So just like when we think of the wonders of all this stuff that's going on in the world, like economics, it's great. Oh, capitalism, it's great. And don't get me wrong, there's things that are awesome about it. But it's also, its basis is based off of things like infinite growth. Well, infinite growth, the only way that exists in nature is in cancer. And that there's things that when you look at it, you realize, oh man, one of these things is not like the other. That comes down to self, who you are, how we think, everything. Don't assume just because you're older that you're an adult. I was in my 30s and I was emotionally, intellectually a child because I could not accept reality for what it was. I needed my story to be what it was. And all of my stuff, even as smart as I felt I was and as smart as other people felt I was, it was all to convey and reinforce my narrative. It wasn't until I allowed my narrative to fade away under whatever the reality was going to give me that I found peace, that I feel I found out who I was, and that I started to experience these ideas of active inference, embodied cognition, and the extended mind, instead of just abstract intellectual ideas that are fun to point out, but as, oh shit, this is how I fucking work. This is how you work. This is how he works. This is how this situation works. This is how this government works. And that was freeing. And don't get me wrong, I don't like most of it. But I don't need you to believe something. I don't need you to be something. I need and I want you to be as free as I feel. And I want myself to be more free and happier, healthier, better off. I don't have to sit in a fucking tiny little room and record on a tiny little phone and then grind out the rest of my day doing work. But you know what? Reality is going to reality. And I'm going to do my best to try to carve out my path within it. But I'm not going to manufacture it. I'm not going to need to belittle others. I'm not going to need to tell myself a story that is not true to do so. Because I'm a creature of active inference, embodied cognition, and extended mind, and my understanding of that has freed me. Let's see if it can free you. We're going to continue this discussion throughout the week. Hit me up on X, SelfGen Podcast. Like, comment, subscribe. Till next time.